Hello and welcome to Assembly Update. I'm Audrey Pitcher here today with Assemblyman Jeffrey Dinowitz from the 81st Assembly District in the Bronx. Assemblyman, thank you very much for joining us today.
Well, thank you.
Now, we are well into the budget season now. We've had hearings all week for the past few weeks. Can you tell us a bit about what you're looking forward to or what you're expecting for this year's budget?
Well, tomorrow is the last budget. Now, today, people see this after we tape it. I bet you most people below a certain age don't know what February 12th is, which is today. I'm not going to ask you. It's the birthday of Abraham Lincoln, arguably the greatest president we've had, although our current president thinks he's better, but separate issue. But in any case, we're getting to the point where we're finishing up the fiscal hearings. Tomorrow is the hearing that covers my area, public protection, where the chairs of the Codes Committee, Judiciary, Corrections, and Governmental Operations Committee participate in listening to testimony of commissioners, of advocates, of other witnesses. Then after the presidential week break, we get into the real nitty-gritty of putting together our own one-house budget resolution. We've spent the last several weeks discussing amongst our members of our conference what the governor is proposing in her executive budget and our reaction to it. And her budget is probably better than most that we've seen in recent years. So does that mean there's less to argue over? Probably not, because no matter how good it is, we're always going to want to do better. And so in the various areas, there will be discussions, whether we should put in more money for education. She's proposing significant increases, but many of us would like to do better. And there are those, on the other hand, who will argue we're spending more money per pupil than any place in the country, and we're not getting the results that we need. So, there's a lot to discuss with that. There's always discussion and debate over Medicaid and other areas of health care, transportation, the MTA, and plus factoring into that the uncertainty over the future of congestion pricing, thanks to the new president, who's also the old president. And so, so there's really much to think about. Plus, the governor is proposing certain tax cuts, what she calls a middle-class tax cut, as well as a $3 billion of tax, I'll call them rebates, whether they're credits or rebates, whereby many families, most families, will be sent checks from the state. So, there's a big mix of things going on, but her proposal would be a record. Every year it's a record budget because it always goes up. It doesn't go down. So every year they say, oh, it's a record this year. Well, it's always a record. So that's what the month of March will be about.
Now, going back to public protections, is there anything in particular you are looking for or any bills you're hoping to pass this year on that?
Well, I certainly have bills that wouldn't be part of the budget, but I have a few what I consider top priority bills. One is a new bill dealing with masking and the fact that there are people out there who wear masks. I'm not talking about the masks you put over your face, your nose and your mouth to protect yourself against COVID and the like. I'm talking about people who cover their entire face and their head, some of whom are doing bad things, particularly during demonstrations. We've seen that certainly since October 7th, but it's not just that issue which we're concerned about. Masking was always banned prior to the pandemic. For many years, you couldn't wear a white hood as one example, but then because of the pandemic, the law was repealed because we wanted to encourage people to wear masks, but not those masks. We wanted to encourage them to wear the kind of masks that protect you from airborne diseases, basically. So we have a bill dealing with that in an appropriate way that does not infringe on First Amendment rights, but does address this very serious concern. And as we've seen, this explosion of anti-Semitism, not that it wasn't there before, but since the October 7th. And then I have another bill which we're working really hard on, which I think we have a shot at this year, which would eliminate the statute of limitations when dealing with human trafficking. And the reason for that is that people who are human trafficking survivors, victims, whatever you want to call them, but I would call them survivors, most often don't come forward or can't come forward within the current statute of limitations, and for various reasons, but one of which is some people just can't bring themselves to do it. And so by eliminating the statute of limitations, it would enable prosecutors to go after really, really bad people. And I think that this is a very clear-cut issue. Either you're for the survivors or you're for the traffickers. There's no middle ground. And then the third bill that I think we came very close to doing last year, but which I've been working on for a while now, deals with what we call the rape intoxication exclusion, where basically somebody who is sexually assaulted will not be able to, in almost all cases, successfully the DA would not successfully bring a prosecution because the potential fact that somebody was intoxicated, whether willingly or not, makes it almost impossible to prosecute them. We want to make sure people get justice, and a law was passed probably about 30 years ago to address the issue of people being drugged, what they call roofies, like in a bar. Some guy, usually it's a guy, puts something in a drink, a woman's drink, and it's usually a woman, but not always, and then they're assaulted, and they wanted to deal with that situation, but the problem is, if somebody voluntarily is intoxicated, they're the ones who aren't protected under the law. And I don't encourage people to drink or take drugs or anything, obviously, but it happens, and that doesn't mean it shouldn't be open season on them to be sexually assaulted. And right now, under the law in New York State, it's very hard to prosecute the people who commit those acts. So. Those are things we're working on. Those are not part of the budget process right now, so things like that tend not to get done until like the end of the session. But there are things in the governor's proposed budget which also really aren't budgetary in nature. For example, one of the things she wants to do is make changes to discovery laws. Discovery is one of the things that was reformed along with bail and speedy trial back in 2019, but there are those who feel we need to adjust it because too many people who've possibly commit, I guess, serious crimes, their cases are being dismissed because of sometimes minor violations of this discovery law. And the discovery law essentially is that prosecutors have to turn over all their evidence to the defense. So she has that in the budget and many other issues which are non-fiscal in nature. And we, generally speaking, not always, but generally speaking, don't like to do those policy issues in the budget. So we'll see, number one, if that ends up in the budget, or even if it doesn't, what changes may be made during the course of the legislative session.
Definitely. Now, going back to the budget, congestion pricing has been a really hot topic this year. Can you talk a bit about the importance of that in New York's budget this year?
Well, congestion pricing was passed as part of the budget in 2019. That's 6 years ago. I think it was 2019. So it was finally implemented at the beginning of this year. Now, I will admit I'm not a fan of the whole concept. I certainly think it's the type of thing that kind of advantages Manhattan and disadvantages pretty much everybody else. However, the issue of congestion in Manhattan is a real one, but more importantly, I think, raising revenue for the MTA to carry out its mission to provide good public transportation, and that includes fixing the tracks and getting new trains and doing certain big projects like continuing the Second Avenue subway and more, hopefully better bus service for the Bronx. That all costs huge amounts of money. And one way to raise the money is through congestion pricing. So it was supposed to take effect last June. The governor put a pause on it, and then brought it back this year at a lower toll. It was going to be $15 originally. Now it's $9. But now Trump is possibly throwing a monkey wrench into it, and some people are glad about that. Well, my feeling is whether you like congestion pricing or not, the President of the United States should butt out. It's none of his business. It's a city issue, or a state issue actually, and he should, he should stick to trying to doing stupid things like renaming the Gulf of Mexico, or trying to take over Gaza and other absurd things. But he should keep his nose out of New York's affairs.
Definitely. And speaking of, so the public protections hearing is tomorrow. Is there anyone in particular you're looking forward to hearing from, or anyone you think is going to be particularly critical?
Well, we always look forward to hearing from the administrator of the court system, of course. I think there'll be a few key issues that are brought up with various witnesses. Like there'll be a panel of some district attorneys coming. I mean, there's going to be a lot of witnesses. It's going to be a long hearing, and we certainly want to hear talk about discovery changes. I also intend to bring up with the appropriate witnesses the issue of masking, because that is an issue which a lot of people care about, and those are just two issues. Another issue, of course, is the fact, I shouldn't call it a fact, but a prisoner in an upstate prison was killed, and it would certainly appear from the video that was taken that he was killed by corrections personnel, and so there's going to be a discussion about that, about how the prisons are run and all that. I mean, whether they're prosecuted, and personally I believe they should be prosecuted. That's up to, there's a special prosecutor that's been appointed to address that.
Definitely.
There are some people who say we should just close that prison altogether. I mean, I don't know about that. What do you do with the prisoners? What do you do with the people who have jobs there, for that matter? But there certainly has to be a serious discussion about how prisons are run, the whole culture in the prisons, and how corrections officers behave. But I don't like to blame somebody for something until I have all the facts.
Well, definitely some critical issues coming up in this year's budget. We look forward to talking about that more with you later.
Okay, I look forward to it.